This video goes through the solutions for the Unit 6 review. So, here we go. There are 3 stages to getting your driver's license in Ontario. That is true. You are fully licensed when you get your G2 license. That is false. With a G2 license, you can drive on your own on any road. That is true. There are some restrictions, but in general, you can drive wherever you want on your own. Taking driver's ed will allow you to take the G1 road test after 6 months. This is false. It's actually 8 months. Demerit points are erased from your record after 1 year. Whoops. Also false. Okay, it is 2 years. There are 3 parts to insurance coverage. That is true. If a tree falls on your car, that is covered by the collision portion. That is false. It's actually covered by the comprehensive portion. An 18-year-old driver would pay less for their insurance than a 35-year-old driver. In general, this is false. They would pay more. Someone living in the country would pay more for their insurance than someone living in the city. Also false. And finally, if you get a ticket, your insurance premium will increase. This is true. In our next example, George bought a brand new Ford Escape for a base price of $27,500. The following costs also needs to be included, and we've got some listed right there. So the first question is to figure out what is the total purchase price of the car. So in order to do that, I'm going to add all the amounts together, including the base price of the car. And then I'm going to take that amount and multiply by 1.13 to get my total price of $32,000. The next question says if the car depreciates 25% per year, so we're losing 25% of the value, how much money would the car be worth if George decided to sell it after a year? So the first thing I know is that I'm losing 25%. So I'm going to figure out what 25% of 32,000 is. Then because I'm losing that value, I'm going to take that away from my total purchase price of the car, which gives me 24,000. So that tells me that the car would be worth 24,000 if George decided to sell after a year. That is in the case of a new car. On this next part, we're going to compare new versus used cars and then buying versus leasing. So let's first list 2 advantages of a new car and a used car. So an advantage is that you can customize a new car and you have that new car smell. You're the first one to drive it. It's yours altogether. Advantages of a used car are that it's usually cheaper. And that it looks like we've got here less expensive, right? So usually cheaper, it's less expensive. Okay, you're not paying as much. A used car could have lots of repairs. New car is usually more expensive, and often the insurance is more expensive. Put that beside here. And you can't customize a new car, or you can't customize a used car. Okay. State whether buying or leasing would be the best option for each. So the first statement is at the end of her 3-year term, Stacy wants to get a new vehicle. So in that situation, it's better to lease. She's turning it in pretty fast. 3 years is not that long to own a car, so leasing would be the better option. Dan travels for work and puts a lot of kilometers on his vehicle. Best option for Dan would be to buy because he puts a lot of kilometers on. Sarah wants to put a spoiler on her car and tint the windows. The best option for her is to buy. Whoops. I'll write that one in because I can't drag it on here. Would be to buy because she wants to do all that customization. In our next question, we're going to look at an example investigating the costs associated with owning a vehicle. So last year you drove 15,000 and the annual cost was 14,575. You also had to do an oil change and a tire rotation. So we're going to figure out the total cost. So we need to figure out how many oil changes we did. So we're going to take the total numbers of kilometers that we drove and divide by how many kilometers we have to get an oil change by. So in that case, we get 3. And then we can figure out our cost for the oil change by multiplying 3 by the cost to give us 84. We're going to do the same thing for the tires. So 15,000 divided by 10,000 gives me 1.5, which I know from the practice that we did yesterday is only one tire change because I haven't gotten to that second mark yet. So if I've only gone once, my cost is only $30. And then to get my total cost, I can just add those 3 values together. So my annual cost for the car from up here, my oil change, and then my tire, which is going to give me my total cost right here. The next thing that I'm going to do is calculate the cost per month. So I'm going to take my total cost and divide by 12, and then the cost per kilometer, which is my total cost, divide by the number of kilometers, which gives me my cost per kilometers. And this one here is my cost per month. Next one is between financing or buying the car and leasing the car. So the first thing we're going to do is calculate the total cost to finance the vehicle. So we're going to look at all this information over here. So the first thing that I know is I make 48 payments of $480 each. So that's the first thing. I also know that I've made a down payment of $3,000. So I'm going to add that on. That total, $26,040, gives me the total cost of financing that vehicle. Next, we're going to look at the cost to lease the vehicle over 3 years if I return it at the end, so without the buyout. So the first thing I have is my monthly payment times 36, because I've got 3 years. And then I'm going to add that to my down payment right here. So 11,340 plus 3,000 is my down payment. But if I want to compare apples to apples, I have to look at how much it cost me to buy the car when the lease is up. So in order to do that, I have to add on the buyout. So I'm going to look at $10,000 times 1.13. I have to calculate the HST. And then I'm going to add that total onto my answer from B. So this one and this one, which gives me my final price to lease the vehicle compared to my final price to finance the vehicle. Now, the last thing that I'm looking at is which method costs me more. So I can see that my financing number is a little bit bigger. So I know that, I'll write that one in. I can't quite get close enough. So I'm going to take my buying number, subtract my leasing number to give me $400. And then I can see that buying actually cost me more by $400 in this situation. The last question that we have is about fuel ratings. So in this example, the car you're driving has a 70-liter tank and the following fuel ratings. So the first question is, how much gas would you use if you drive 750 kilometers on the highway? So I'm looking at my highway driving. I know the first thing I'm going to do is divide those two numbers in the fuel consumption rating. When I'm looking for the amount of gas that I would use, I'm going to multiply. So I'm going to take the number of kilometers that I use times the two numbers that I divided from the fuel consumption rating to give me a total of 68.25 liters. For B, how far could you drive in the city on one tank? So the first thing I'm going to do, bless me, is to divide my city fuel consumption rating. And then now I'm looking for how far I could drive. So instead of multiplying like I did in the first example, I'm going to divide. So I'm going to take my fuel tank size, divide by those numbers that I got from dividing the fuel consumption rating to give me 569 kilometers.